This is Mike Wall. Welcome back to another episode of the Agent Revolution podcast presented by Mike Wall Live, the place where we deconstruct the biggest challenges facing today's real estate agents so that they can build a sustainable, profitable, but most of all, fulfilling real estate business. Man, I am so excited today. I got my man, Austin, Texas mega agent Chris Waters, and we're talking about how he built a $250 million team. That's B with a billion. And so if you are building a team or you are a single agent, you don't have a team, but you want to have a team, this is the show for you. Don't forget, you can get more great free real estate business training over at MikeWallLive.com. Chris, are you ready to rock and roll, my man?
Let's do this. Thanks for having me on, Mike. Yeah.
Let's go, baby. Let's go. So, I'm super excited. Like I said, we were talking a little bit before the show. There's going to be a lot to cram into this show because you've done so much in our industry. And we could probably talk for hours about, your accomplishments and where you've gotten. But we're gonna try to get really granular, but keep it on a level so that everybody understands. And there's a lot of actionable information that you can take from today's episode and implement that into your business and make a real impact. But before we get into today's topic, Chris, tell us a little bit about you. Give us your background, your story.
I guess if I go way back, I didn't come from anybody that had a real estate background and, grew up with a single mom. She was a smart lady, worked super hard, but, never, I did a lot to provide for my brother and I, but never made a ton of money. And so, kind of out of necessity, I got really resourceful to learn how to make money as a kid. Mowing lawns, all that kind of stuff, and getting, a job at a really early age. And so I graduated college. And when I graduated, actually one of my customers in college, I had a lawn mowing business, and that's what I used to pay my way through school. And one of my lawn mowing customers had a small real estate team. It was like a husband-wife team.
Sure.
And I had gotten a degree in finance, and this guy had also gotten a degree in finance, but found his way into real estate brokerage and working at Keller Williams. And great people, great couple. And I was like 21 years old at the time, and looking back, to be honest, I wasn't in a very coachable place at my life. And I joined their team, and started going through coaching and training, and, felt like, my ego got in the way. Mm-hmm. And, I started off as a buyer's agent or whatever. And, thought I should have been growing faster, and the bottom line, just not coachable. Found myself, out of the industry within about 4 months. And, this is 2007.
Okay.
And the hot thing like back then in 2007 was like 2008, 2009 was the oil and gas market, like natural gas in 07, 08 was like blowing up. So I'm down here in Texas. It's a big thing down here. I had a customer I had sold a house to that convinced me to go work in the oil and gas industry. I did that for 2 years, was completely miserable. And for those entire 2 years, like during the day, I was doing my job, but like in the evenings, like literally every evening I was reading and learning about real estate.
Yeah.
Like you can go on this website, activerain.com, and I'm like literally writing blog articles back in like 2007, 8, 9, working on like SEO, and like, I'm not even really selling houses, And so anyways, long story short, the market crashed, 2008, price of natural gas plummeted, the whole industry got crushed. I hated the job anyway, so it was like a blessing in disguise. I invested in this bar and restaurant. That went bust. I lost every dollar to my name, and I'm like, damn, what the hell do I do now?
Somebody wanted you to be in real estate, man.
What's funny is like it put me in this incredibly humble place.
Yeah.
Incredibly humble. Like when I was 21 and this guy, recruited me into real estate, like, I was 21, I graduated college, debt free. I built this pretty sizable, like, lawn care and landscaping business. I was doing like $250,000 a year in revenue, mowing lawns. I mean, we were mowing a lot of lawns.
Yeah.
I have a permanent farmer's tan on my arms from 15 years ago. So, I mean, I kid you not, like if I go out in the sun, the pool or whatever, like there's this distinct, farmer's tan. Anyways, my point is like, what I didn't have the humility to be coachable. And, I genuinely am, I should have stayed in real estate. I should have been coachable. I would have been so much further ahead. But bottom line, end of 2009, market's horrible. I lost all my money in this bar and restaurant investment, oil and gas industry. I mean, it was like a hell of a, 3-4 years out of college. I was just getting the crap beat out of me.
Right.
And so the only thing, like, at that point I knew I really wanted to do was, like, I was really interested in real estate. And so in beginning of 2010, there's a crap ton of expired listings.
Sure. I
mean, tons of them. Like, every house is failing to sell. And so, like, I buckled down. I was really humble, and I just, I didn't have any money to pay for leads, and I just committed to calling expireds over and over again. And to be honest, I was dreadful at it for like 6 months, and I hired a coach to help me. And then that was really a game changer, getting involved in coaching. Like, I worked with a guy named Jay Kinder, who
Yep.
And, like, I tell Jay all the time, like, he literally changed my life. I mean, like, if I had not, learned what I learned from him back in 2000, I guess it's 2011, like, I would not be where I am today. And so, like, a lot of the success I've had is just from, trying to stay in a place of humility and learning from other people that are a lot smarter than me versus trying to, like, reinvent the wheel. So anyways, that's kind of how I got into real estate and how things kind of, started propelling. That's a long-winded answer to your question.
So you started out as kind of a single agent operator, like most people do, right? And it was just you and your phone, right? And you were smiling and dialing, and what started happening? You started setting some appointments, and you started getting some listings, and some of those listings started to sell.
Yep. I started, I mean, it was ugly. I mean, I would prospect like 3-4 hours every morning, jump on Mojo, and, like, I was setting maybe 2 appointments a week if I was lucky. And, like, I'm putting in serious time prospecting, and, I'm doing open houses on the weekend, like, I'm doing all the things, and I'm working my tail off, and my results were dreadful. But when I started learning, like, scripting, objection handling, et cetera, I started setting, 4 appointments a week, 5. And then, like, that really started to change the momentum for me. So I started picking up listing inventory. Something else I did that was just like, kind of out of necessity, to be honest, because I was so broke. I started this thing that, basically I started collecting money from other local businesses that I was, like, helping. Yeah. And so I kind of coined this my brand ambassador program. Like, I personally became a brand ambassador for other local businesses. And so, like, at that point, I wasn't selling that many homes. I was selling, like, I think, at that point, like 35, 40 homes or whatever in that first year.
Okay.
And so I wasn't selling that many homes, but, like, I recognized I was having a real impact on other people's local businesses. Like, I sent this roofer, like, 4 roofing jobs. Each roof costs, like, $8,000. Well, that was $35,000 in gross revenue. So I started, asking, and, like, the mortgage company, title company, home warranty company, insurance company, whatever. And, like, I started asking them, would they be willing to commit some money into a marketing kitty to help drive each of our businesses? Yep. And so, like, again, like, I'm a small producing agent, 35, 40 deals, whatever it was in that first 2010 year. And, like, I got up to, I think, $2,500 to $3,000 a month in marketing dollars. And so when that happened, I started, I needed to spend the money, obviously, on marketing. And so when that started, I started spending the money on marketing and generating a crap ton of leads, obviously. Mm-hmm. And so at that point, I also, like, subsequently, started recruiting agents to start working the leads, and totally screwed that up. In a matter of 90 days, I recruited a ton of people. I got 20 agents on the team, but
I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because I know exactly what you were going through when you had 20 different stories or 20 different dramas, and you're trying to run a real estate business.
Yeah, well, the first year was a total catastrophe. Like, at the end of 12 months, we sold 98 homes, which may sound awesome, but the truth is, me and one other guy sold 80 of those houses, and the other 18 agents sold 18 houses.
Right, and you had to put up with their shit the whole time, right?
Oh, it was a complete disaster.
Because there's nothing the funny thing is, Chris, and the only reason I laugh is I'm laughing with you, not at you, because when you're building a team, it's just, hey, if you have a license and you can fog a mirror, come join my team, right?
Yeah.
There's no due diligence at all in bringing someone on your team.
Yeah, I mean, I've basically I guess I'm dumb enough to get punched in the face like 99 times to hope that one attempt is like a knockout, because it's just been a massive amount of failure, and then investing a lot of money in coaching and mentoring, and I mean, it's I tell people all the time, NAR got formed in 1908. Which means the real estate industry has been around a really long time. Right. And unless you're like Zillow or Open Door or one of these companies with hundreds of millions of dollars, you don't have the money and time to waste trying to figure this out. And a lot of people have walked the walk before you. So build a foundation on proven principles before you go try to reinvent the wheel like Zillow or Redfin or Open Door or one of those.
Right. And so what I'm hearing you say is that the value of coaching and mentoring has had a major impact on the on the success of your business. And I can second that. I think that for me, that's when I understood the value of coaching and mentoring, that's when my business really took a turn. That's when I started to think more as a businessman than as a real estate agent, right? And I'm sure that was the same for you.
Yep, you nailed it. Yeah, I think when I think about over the last 10 years, like the years where things didn't go as planned, ultimately it was because I stopped being a student. I think I got out of my humility and stopped being a student, and and so now it's man, I have 1, 2, 3. I'm paying for 3 different coaches right now. I've got a leadership coach. I've got one that's like a health, coach. I've got a business coach. I pulled out this thing. They just sent me this in the mail. This is a great organization called CEO Coaching International. Sure. I wouldn't encourage anybody to this is a great company. I'm not say anything negative. I wouldn't encourage anybody that's an agent to get involved in this. It's more once you've got a business north of 5 million in actual revenue, real revenue, $5 million in your bank account, not 5 million in gross sales, but 5 million in real revenue. That's, when you start getting involved in, stuff like this. Sure. But it's man, it's the fastest shortcut to accelerate your growth curve is to learn from other people that have been there, done it, and you can learn the proven principles.
Yeah, that's great, man. Okay, so we're getting good here. So what year are we? We sold 98 homes. We have 20 agents or so-called agents, right? And and one other guy sold 80 of the 90 homes or 98 homes. What year was that?
That was the summer of 2011.
Okay, so what was your mindset summer of 2011? You just sold the 98 homes. It was you and another guy sold the bulk of them. Where were you at mentally then?
I mean, I felt like a complete failure. I thought to myself, maybe I should just be an agent and be, a solopreneur and, try to squeeze as much juice out of being a top producing agent and, give up on building a team. I mean, that's where my mind was in the summer of 2011. And I literally, I burned the entire team down in the summer of 2011. I let every single person go over the course of 3 to 4 months, let everybody go. And I kept one key person on the team. And honestly, if he had not, said yes to the opportunity of being what I call in my book, the buyer agent team leader. I call it the buyer agent team lead. If he had not green lighted the opportunity, and it took me 3 to 4 months to convince him to do it. If he hadn't have green lighted the opportunity, man, I don't know. I may not have, I may not have built the business like it is today. And
today,
what's that?
Are you still working with that gentleman today?
Yeah, he and I co-authored this book.
Very cool, man. That's awesome, brother. So you was your ride or die, so to speak.
I mean, I recruited 20 people, and fortunately, like one of them was like a real badass. So
there in Austin, it's 20-1, right? To get a good hire.
What's interesting is like I think a lot of us, that are producing agents, and we're selling a good number of houses, 25, 30, 35, 40, 50 homes as a solo agent. Like I think we forget that is a lot of homes. Like selling 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever homes, that's a lot of homes. And I think like we take for granted what we're doing from a production perspective, and we compare ourselves to other people, but like that's pretty amazing. Yeah. And I think we forget that like that type of person is a rare breed.
Sure.
And I think about like organizations that are basically organizations built on finding the rare breed. And so like some organizations. So one thing I didn't get to is like after like failing at hiring, I started like trying to learn from other people that built these highly productive teams. So like I started studying Navy SEALs, the military. I studied a nonprofit called Teach for America. I flew out and spent some time at Zappos, went through their culture camp thing. I studied like finance industry, like Goldman Sachs, like what they do to onboard people. And what I realized is like if you're trying to build a business predicated on like agent productivity versus agent count,
yeah,
the percentage of people that are going to qualify to be on your team is very, very few. Sure. And so you have to meet a exorbitant number of people to find the rare find that's going to, sell 25, 30, 35, 40 homes. Because a lot of people, they're not in the right place in their lives. They don't have the right, internal values. Like they just, there's a lot of ingredients missing. And so I think, I think, every business owner since the dawn of America, they've all said like the biggest struggle is finding good help. It's like, that's like the most common phrase is like finding good help. And like for all of us that are agents, like we hear all the time about how you've got to spend all this time lead generating and converting leads and all this stuff. But when you start trying to make that transition to like building an organization, what helps build that bridge is you changing that time block from, focusing on lead generation, lead conversion, and pivoting it to focusing on recruiting and selection, like recruiting and selecting talent. And so anyways, I'm preaching to the choir here to you, Mike. You know all this.
I just love it. I eat stuff like this up because essentially what you did is you're recruiting and recruiting talent is no different than lead generating buyers or sellers. It's really not. It's just that the semantics change a little bit. You know what I mean? It's like, how many calls do you make before you set an appointment when you're calling expireds, right? You may make 100 calls before you set one appointment, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Talent is the same way. It's just a law of numbers, and what you focus on expands. So if you got to a point in your business where you said, you know what, I feel comfortable with the production level and where we're at and the people who are on my team right now to take certain things off my plate, so I don't have to show up in that side of the business. So now I can turn to what I deem as a more important side of the business. And you're right, which is recruiting and then also retaining that talent. Then that's what you're going to see start to grow. Now, granted, I don't want to simplify that by any stretch of the imagination, because I know when you get to that point that there are other things that need to be in place, because you can't just leave one side of the business and focus on another one. You have to have something in place in order to do that. And that might be an ops manager who's going to continue to hold these people accountable, right? And continue to train these people so that you can build this side. But to your point, Chris, what you were talking about before, when you said you had a little bit of an ego when you first got into the industry, and after 4 months you were out. What I've always learned, no matter what I've done, is that when I start something new, I have to completely empty my cup so that as big as my ego may be and as good as our team may be in real estate here in Ohio, if I'm starting a new venture, be it, an investment business or starting to, focus in on recruiting, that's a whole different ballgame, my man. And you've got to, while you may know all this stuff in real estate and working with buyers and sellers, that doesn't count anymore. You know what I mean? When you're learning something new, you got to empty the cup and allow people to fill it up. And you chose to speed that process up by investing in coaching, and it worked for you, obviously.
Yep. Yeah, man, you're a natural trainer, coach. I love it. I love it, dude.
And so for you and I love walking through the sequence of events because you're at a level now where you are so successful, but it's like the path is it's always the same for all of us, and we all take these bumps and bruises. And the funny thing is, as you were talking about before, and I have a friend named Matt who's a KW agent. And I was just talking to him, a couple hours ago, and he was telling me about how, he's at the point right now where he got rid of his last agent, right? And he was like, man, I'm just done with these people. I'm not building a team. I'm going to shoulder the load myself. And we were just kind of laughing, you know what I mean? And I was like, man, I just so remember being there. And it's funny to hear you reference that as well.
Yep.
So tell me this. So it sounds like you started to figure some stuff out. You fired everybody. You went through and I don't want to say fired, but I call it you release people to industry, right? And hopefully we find something better.
I repositioned them out of the company.
And so you get to the point to where, hey, you're like, hey, I can do this on my own. But then something happened, right? You knew that ultimately your goal, it wasn't going to change, right? Because what you went through at that point was, I think you start to figure out, and not everybody does, but you start to figure out that, I'm not sure I necessarily want to meet with buyers and sellers for the rest of my life. I think, maybe my gift is helping other folks in working with them through their personal goals and working through with buyers and sellers. And so talk to me about that shift a little bit, when you started to make that transition.
Well, what happened was I told you if Brad had not finally accepted the position of the buyer agent side, I don't know. Again, I think ultimately what happened is out of necessity, because at that point, from a mindset perspective, I didn't want to coach agents up because I was frustrated. And so I delegated the leadership component of recruiting, selecting, and training buyer's agents on our team. And when I delegated that to somebody better at it than me, because quite honestly, the people I recruited, it wasn't like they were bad. It was more so me. I wasn't a good leader, right? And I wasn't a good coach at that point. And so I delegated to somebody better than me. And then what happened was I started, really focusing on the listing side, and I hired an inside salesperson so that I could go on more appointments. Yeah. And I hired an inside salesperson that was better than me at setting appointments. And so my listing inventory started growing really fast. I started taking 12 to 18 listings every month like clockwork. And, what happened was, summer of 2011, burn the team down, basically start all over. And in 2012, we end up selling 150 homes. And then in 2013, sold 325 homes.
Nice.
And so what changed is I delegated the leadership to somebody better than me at helping recruit and select and train agents. I went all in on the listing side. I was basically like the rainmaker, and I had an ISA setting appointments for me. And then, we started building a ton of momentum. And so I think, giving up the control, delegating, those were some of the key components of it growing. And then, what caused me to shift to get out of being in the business and stop producing was, I remember this like it was yesterday, even though it's been 7 years now. So the summer of 2013, it was the end of June, summer of 2013. In those first 6 months, I went on 267 listing appointments. And I remember this because I have never been in so much mentally so exhausted and I'm a pretty even keeled kind of person, not naturally anxious or any of that kind of stuff. Always optimistic and in good spirits, whatever. And in the summer of 2013, I hit this brick wall. like I was like, just constantly anxious. I was consuming more caffeine than like, any human should ever consume. 267 listing appointments in 6 months, no joke. Like I was working 7 days a week, 6 a.m. to 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. Like not many people really know what 100+ hour work week is. And it was insane. And so
your adrenals be fried too, man.
it was really bad. And so almost out of necessity, I had to get out of production. Like I had to find somebody to start going on listing appointments for me. And so I recruited one of our buyer's agents into a listing agent role. He did really good, but then I burnt him out 6 months later and he quit on me. And so I realized I needed to hire multiple listing agents to handle, that kind of appointment volume. And so, basically like, the shift for me being a producing agent to more in an ownership role really came just as a result from like a mental health perspective and just, having to start delegating things. And, and then, the rest is history. 2014, we sold like 500 some odd homes and, started testing expansion like in 2014, 2015. And now we're in 15 different markets. And my, the home base in Austin is the one that'll, should do close to 1,000 transactions this year. Not including all the expansion stuff, but, anyways, yeah, that's kind of what happened over those subsequent 2 years.
And so you said, was it 2015 you started talking expansion?
Yeah, it was like end of 2014. I found like a key person that was interested in kind of copying and pasting everything we were doing. Yeah. And, and she went like full blown, like a rocket ship in 2015. She was a solo agent. And, I just shared with her all the things not to do that I screwed up. And, she grew huge. She went from like 30 deals to 100 in year one and then 200. And anyways, so
talk to me about this, man. Cause obviously it's there's a ton to unpack obviously in that story from, going from 300 to 500 to, 900, but what do you think aside from, coaching, and I think where I'm going with this, aside from coaching, I think in most cases, it just always tends to come back to people. And, we were talking about earlier when I was telling you about my friend Matt, who I was meeting with earlier for coffee, but we were talking about, you can only build a business out so far with systems, right? And then what happens is when you get your systems dialed in, you've got to leverage your business out with finding talent. And I'm just curious for you. So you probably built these systems out and then you hire people on, or you have somebody that hires and trains people on to work the systems. But talk to me a little bit about, like, peel back the curtain a little bit. Talk to me about the systems that the Waters team use. What's going on behind the scenes?
Yeah, it started off very simplistic in the early days. It was basically like building checklist for each phase of the customer journey. So it started off very simplistically as checklists, and those checklists helped develop the position agreements for the people I hired. And then as their volume, got too high, I'd have to hire somebody else. And then like that person got more specialized in part of that checklist. So, it started off very simplistically as, checklists to manage the customer journey from, for example, on the listing side, coming soon to active, depending, to, past client follow-up. And then, like same with inside sales, it started off with scripting and objection handling stuff that, was like basically like a drop, back then Dropbox, now it's Google Drive. But, it started off simplistically as just, some very basic like documentation or, SOPs, like standard operating procedures, on how to, how to do your job. And to be honest, when I started hiring people, they refined those checklists and processes and improved it even better than I could.
Yeah.
And then, when as volume grew, I needed leadership in place, because we started, having more and more W-2 people. And so at a certain point, I had a transaction coordinator, team lead, a TCTL. And, he started having to build out kind of like the first 30-day ramp up program for transaction coordinators and listing managers, et cetera. And so he, kind of took things to the next level, like kind of version 3.0, if you will. So, I mean, everything is ultimately predicated on the customer journey from a process perspective in terms of servicing clients, whether they're buyers or sellers, and everything each person does from a job description and role and responsibilities perspective is a function of the customer journey and what part of the customer journey they manage.
Yeah. You know what I think you've gotten really good at? I just figured this out, man. It's not really the systems are dialed in, no doubt about it. You don't sell 900 homes for $270 million without great systems. But what I think you've really figured out is the hiring process. It sounds like you're able to bring people in who you're then able to turn specific roles over to, and they're doing it. Like they're literally they're absorbing that task, and they're taking it even further than you would have ever even thought about taking it. Is that am I right?
Yep, you nailed it. Mm-hmm.
So okay, that begs the question then: how in the heck are you finding these people?
So I think I talked earlier about how I started studying like Navy SEALs, and there's a really cool nonprofit called Teach for America, and then Goldman Sachs, and like some pretty incredible organizations that are who they are today because they've really dialed in the recruiting and selection process. And so something that I learned the hard way is that for the most part, for anything sales related, like hiring anybody that's in a sales type role, the interview process for the most part is like total and utter bullshit. Like it's a formality at its best. And so like, the thing, like, for example, if you research Teach for America or you watch in the Discovery Channel, the Navy SEAL thing, right? Like when you're looking for, really high caliber talent, the interview process is like, I mean, it's terrible. It's like, it's not it doesn't give you a true reflection of how that person is going to actually perform. Yeah. And in real estate, you need you need people that perform. And so, basically what I realized is like, I needed to, kind of think about the recruiting and selection process, like a funnel. And I think the mistake, I made in the beginning was, when I hired somebody, like in my mind, like I green lighted them like, okay, this person's going to be with me for the next 3, 4, 5 years. Wow. And so a little shift that I recognized that is something that holds true in these organizations like Teach for America, Special Forces, organizations like that, is that they take people through practical application and a quasi like probationary period where you hire them. Like, for example, like, the Navy SEALs, they do this 6-month training, right? If you watch it on the Discovery Channel. And like they, take them through Hell Week and all these things, and so like they put them into a real live type scenario, and they want to see how they perform. Mm-hmm. And same with Teach for America and these other organizations. There's a movie that Will Smith was in called Pursuit for Happiness.
Yeah, Pursuit of Happiness.
Yeah. Yep. And, he worked at this brokerage, stock whatever brokerage. And, he was in a class of like 25 people. And they said on the very first day in that movie that, whoever got the highest test score and whoever had the most book sales, was going to get a job offer. So think about that. Like 1 out of 25 people actually, gets hired. Right. I mean, and then think about how many people applied for that, whatever program, right? And then only 25 got accepted. So like at the top of the funnel, you have to put an exorbitant amount of people, like probably 10x what you think. And then you've got to, think about like when you greenlight somebody to join your organization, think about those first like 90 days, for example, as kind of a trial period for them and you to see if they're a good fit. And then like, only a very small percentage of people are going to fall out of the bottom of the funnel that are actually going to be successful. And then I think the secondary thing is, especially in the early stages of building your business, you need to be cognizant of like, what people's strengths are. And so like on the buyer agent team, for example, like I would meet a lot of people that, I would figure out pretty quickly, like, they were a great culture fit, but they weren't, probably going to excel at sales. Like it just really wasn't where their strengths lie. And so, I started, plucking people from the team and putting them in other positions based off their strengths. And so I think that's just something, I guess, fortunately, that's something I do kind of naturally as I think about it like a chessboard. There's a lot of things I suck at, but the one thing like I do like naturally is like I can figure out pretty quickly and assess where people's strengths lie and like help influence them to double down on their strengths. And so, just about, I think if you're building a team, you got to focus on like, how can you move people around to, be successful. And so, like my first transaction coordinator, not my first transaction coordinator, but my first like leader on the ops side started off as a buyer's agent. And I met him and I said, man, you would really crush it on our transaction management team. And he got into that role, crushed it, and then like, showed leadership potential and moved into a leadership role. Now he's my director of operations, like oversees all the employees. And, he and I are actually about to start a REIT. We just filed the paperwork with the Security and Exchange Commission to start a REIT, and he's in the middle of replacing himself. But anyways, I think, you got to spend an exorbitant amount of time on the recruiting and selection process. And, you need to embrace the first 90 days as a trial period when you bring people on and like put them in real world settings and see how they actually do.
Yeah, that's great, man. And like I said, you really started to paint a picture for me, and it stood out. And I think people who do really well in our industry are people who are able to identify talent. Like you said, it's putting the right people on the bus, but also making sure that they're in the right seat. And you've kind of doubled down on finding the right people, and then kind of, I don't want to say letting the rest take care of itself, but you put the people in place to help the rest take care of itself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And now obviously you've built this huge organization that sells tons and tons of real estate, and you're in several different marketplaces. Let me ask you this: a guy that's accomplished as much as you do, how do you keep raising the bar? Like, what are you in it for now? What drives you now?
Yeah. So great question. First off, I try to be really self-aware and conscious of that. I think just my internal big why is to, constantly be pushing the limits and, upward growth. I think I heard Tony Robbins say this at Unleash. I took my whole team a couple of years ago to Unleash the Power Within.
Awesome.
And I remember Tony Robbins saying that, as human beings, we all derive happiness from forward progress.
Yeah.
We all define happiness from forward progress. And so like that holds true for, your relationships, for your business, your health, whatever. That's why people can sometimes become depressed when things feel like for a long period of time you're going in the wrong direction. And so, I think I'm just like everybody else. Like I'm just always trying to, progress and, move up. You move up from a progression and growth perspective, and get better every day. But I try to be self-aware of like, I constantly need to be like changing my environment. Yeah. So for example, for anybody that like follows me on YouTube, I don't have a very successful YouTube channel. It gets like, I think like 15 or 20 views, but I I learned a lesson really early on in my career that about how important it is to surround yourself with other successful people. And I learned that from, going to these conferences and masterminds and whatnot. And, I had a lot of coaches tell me to do it. And so I kind of, got to a point where I kind of got to the proverbial pinnacle of what I thought was the ceiling or what have you in the brokerage industry. And, and I didn't know where to start, where to go from there. And so, I think it's constantly a self-awareness assessment kind of quasi exercise of assessing my environment, people I spend time with, and then finding out where do other people congregate that are at the next level. So, I mean, for me at this point, where my headspace is at is I'm thinking about how to go compete with Glenn Stanford at EXP, how to compete with Gary Keller at Keller Williams. That's kind of where my head's at now.
Love it.
And so, it's not like you can go and, find a lot of people like that to learn and coach from. And so, that's why I was holding this thing up earlier. That's why I got involved with CEO Coaching International. My coach now, she sold her first company for over $500 million. She's had multiple $1 billion exits. I spent the summer in Aspen. That's why I mentioned my YouTube channel. I spent the summer in Aspen because, I wanted to meet more people that, are kind of at the top of the, I don't want to say the top of the world, but it does feel like in Aspen, it's this very, what's that?
Top of the business world anyway, right?
I mean, it's the craziest thing. I had I rented a house there in this area called the West End, and the guy across the street from me was buying up all of the default mortgages back in 2009, had a hedge fund, billions of dollars. And then the Prime Minister of Ireland's down the road. I got the Walmart family, a couple houses down, the heirs. I got portfolio hedge fund managers and REIT managers, and just, just crazy successful people. And, so I think what keeps me going is just constantly trying to raise the bar and trying to figure out how, I can just keep growing. That's ultimately what it comes down to.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. One more question, and I'm just going to ask this selfishly because I want to know. Do you find, from a recruiting standpoint, in our industry, do you find it better to recruit within our industry or outside of our industry?
So I think it really depends on where you are in the growth curve. So, for example, if you have a newer team, you're in what I would call the early climb, which is less than 150 closings a year is what I would call as the early climb. And in the early climb, hiring brand new licensed agents could be a big challenge. I'm sorry. This is my wife's dog. Say hi, everybody.
Listen, we always have this, man. It's we've got lawnmowers going in the background, we've got babies crying, we got dogs barking, we got cats jumping on the back.
Hey, hang on 1 second. Hang on. I apologize. Hang on.
Gosh, we're at 46 minutes, and I could go another hour and a half with this guy. He's amazing.
Hey, so sorry about that.
You're good, Chris. You're good, brother. You're good.
So where were we?
So I asked you, you were talking about the early stages, 150 and below, talking about
yeah. Well, and maybe I wouldn't even say it's 150 and below. You shouldn't hire brand new agents until you have a buyer agent team lead in place, because you just don't have enough time to train people up from the ground up.
Okay.
I think once you have a person dedicated to the recruiting, selection, training process, then you can hire brand new people.
Okay.
But I think if you're running the team-centric model, the ideal avatar is somebody between 6 months and 2 years in the business. And the sweet thing about that is they've learned the basics of real estate, and you can start giving them some of the tech tools, leads, and training, whatnot. And your value proposition is really, really big. And, they're probably going to be really appreciative of what you can give them, because they're at a big box brokerage, for example, and they can't figure it out.
Sure.
So, yeah, I think focus on finding people already in the business, like 6 months to 2 years in. That first iteration of me building a team, a lot of the people I had hired had been in the business for like 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And I hired them thinking like, okay, cool. Like, I don't know how to train agents, but like, I figured out how to be a, somewhat successful agent. And
Right.
so like, hopefully they'll, I'll give them leads and they'll figure it out. And that unfortunately was not the case. I mean, the thing you have to recognize is like, if someone's been in the industry 10, 15, 20 years, and they haven't figured out how to find success yet, they're probably not going to find it with you. And it's probably not worth the experiment of testing and trying to see if they'll work out or not.
Amen to that. Amen to that, man. Well, I promised you a couple minutes here at the end of the show. I know you've got a ton of value to offer. You've written books. You've got different programs you offer on social media. Take just a minute to talk about some of the stuff that you're doing and share that with our audience.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think for anybody that's like a real estate agent trying to, position themselves to, ultimately build a business that can run without them at some point, I over the years, I had a lot of people, ask me to, share with them how to do it. And so, I started just like, quietly kind of telling people, what to do. And like, I was really hesitant to share with people because like, I didn't want to like give advice to people and then like they not succeed. And so I quietly kind of like started sharing with people what I was doing, like the brand ambassador program and like, recruiting and like the organizational structure and all that kind of stuff. And like, after a couple of years, like, people started getting a lot of results from what I was recommending. And so I had a couple of people recommend I write a book, which is what I kept flashing up earlier. And so I basically wrote a book kind of documenting my journey of like ascending this, mountain, basically like what I call the early climb, the awkward teenager stage, explosive growth, and then the great escape. And so I talk about those phases of the growth curve. And so I figured out, by the way, how important those phases are of the growth curve, because I was like, selling 500 homes and like, I'm trying to help somebody selling 30, 40, 50 homes scale up. And what I'd recognize is like what was working for me selling 500 homes is not going to work for somebody trying to go from 30 to 100. And so there's very like tactical things you do depending on where you are in the growth curve. So anyways, for anybody watching this, I'll give this book away for free. And it'll be my contribution to help people trying to grow. And I gotta, let me see if I have a link to get a copy of it for free here.
Yeah, I want to copy.
I got like a special like URL where people get like a promo code or whatever to get the book free. You can buy this on Amazon or Audible or whatever. I think it's like $20. Okay. But I think I've got a link here. Okay, cool. Here, I'll put it in the
put it in the comments.
Yeah, I'll put it in the comments. This is a link to get it for free. It's got like the built-in promo code or whatever.
Awesome.
The only thing I ask for people to pay for is shipping, handling. Like, man, I started, I've given the book away free plenty of times. And like, I started, shipping the book to like Greece and I had some guy take a picture of this on the Great Wall of China. And I have the $25, actually it's almost $30 shipping charge from like sending it to him. I sent it to some dude in Greece and like, man, it was like 30 some odd bucks in shipping. I was like, holy cow. So anyways, I this book cost me like $5-6 to print or whatever. So I'll pay for it to be printed, but you cover the shipping. And I, feel free to tell people they can connect with me on YouTube, Instagram, any of that stuff.
Let's help this man build his YouTube viewing, folks.
Yeah, my YouTube page is horrible. It's terrible. I needed to go get coaching on how to build a YouTube channel because mine's pretty terrible.
That's your next big venture, right?
All the kids nowadays, that's what they want to do, man. They want to be big YouTubers, I hear.
Right, man. Like Chris, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to share with our audience. I was telling the audience when you were, off handling the dog that it was, we're 52 minutes in or thereabouts, and I could talk to you probably for another hour or 2 hours easily about, your journey because I know I've got a lot to learn from you, and so does our audience. So I truly do. I thank you for, for coming with an abundance mindset, ready to share with our audience. I've learned a lot. And I know our audience has as well. Thank you so much.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And as usual, I love sharing these stories week after week because I know this show is literally changing agents' financial lives, my own included. Do me a big favor. If you know someone that might enjoy the podcast, please, please, please share it with them. And if you like the podcast, please go to wherever you listen to podcasts, make sure and subscribe and leave me a big old 5-star review. Don't forget to visit MikeWallLive.com where you can get 8 hours of absolutely free real estate business training. For Mike Wall and Chris Waters, it's been a great show. Chris, thanks again, man. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Mike. See you, buddy.